Hello, how are you? I am Kenya and I will be presenting today on presentation skills and classroom management. The irony there, I'm presenting on presentation skills. So, before we get started, I want to explain what the Junior Achievement High School Heroes program is. And so, it is a program that provides leadership development opportunities to high school students who deliver junior achievement programs in elementary schools. What that means is Junior Achievement creates a curriculum, they hand it to you for the day, and you present in the classroom. I am so grateful today for the opportunity to be able to present in the classroom with Junior Achievement. It has provided me with such passion for curriculum building, presenting, and teaching younger folks. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. Okay. Um, so the definition for presentation skills are the skills that you need in delivering effective and engaging presentations to a variety of audiences. We're going to start with some key principles. So, whenever you are prepping for a presentation, you want to always chunk the information, you want to organize the content, and you want to make sure it is relevant to what you are presenting. Chunking information means not having too much on the slides so that it is hard for the viewers to read. Organizing the content means you want to have purpose in where you're putting your slides. So you want everything about principles in one section, you want everything about definitions and terms in another section, and you want everything about interacting in the classroom in another section. And you want to always make sure it is relevant to what you are teaching because you lose the audience that way. Three more key principles. You want to make sure it has an importance, it's appropriate, and it looks visually attractive. Next, you want to practice. So before presenting to you all today, I practiced with Junior Achievement Admins and I received feedback and then I did it again. Practice, practice, practice makes perfect, and it also makes you more comfortable in front of the camera. You want to transform your nervous energy. So I may be very nervous right now, but I am using a smile and I am putting that energy into how I am presenting to you all today. And arrive early. So had this been a in-person presentation, I would arrive at least 15 to 20 minutes before the viewers would arrive. You want to always be aware of and conscious of time. If you say your presentation is going to be 20 minutes, then you don't want to have folks sitting in front of your presentation for 45. You want to be kind, aware, and respectful of your audience time and engage your audience. So you don't want to talk like this or you don't want to look away from your audience. You want to interact and engage so that folks are really able to keep their minds and their attention on you. So, there is a difference between reading directly off of your slides and not having background information, and reading directly off your slides but providing some context. So the viewers can see your slides. You don't need to just read over them and go on to the next thing. It becomes very repetitive, and then folks will have questions about why you didn't just send an email with the presentation for them to go over it themselves. You don't want to overuse your transitions and sounds. You don't want it to keep sliding left and keep sliding right. And you don't want your words to move up and down the screen. And definitely want to make sure you are cognizant of your pace. You don't want to talk too fast and you don't want to talk too slow. So when you are standing up and presenting in front of a classroom as a junior achievement high school hero, you don't want to pace back and forth because folks can get dizzy. Like if I'm looking at a presenter and I have to keep doing this, it becomes me paying attention to how much they're moving rather than what they're saying. You don't want to fidget with your hands. You don't want to do this the whole time. You don't want to do this because I know that my attention span is pretty short. And so if someone's moving in front of the presentation, I forget that they're presenting something important to me and I pay attention to how much they're moving. You also don't want to or like or too many times. Sometimes that happens when we're really nervous. So it's important to be very pay attention to your words and be very cognizant of how much we're talking. We don't need fill-in. So if you don't have much to say, don't try to prolong it because then it becomes an fest. Next, let's go over classroom management. So the straight, flat out definition of classroom management is it's a term that teachers use to describe the process of ensuring that the classroom lessons run smoothly without disruptive behavior from students, compromising the delivery of instruction. Classroom management is basically how well you are able to keep the attention spans of your students and how you're able to govern your classroom. So we do this by creating different things or different guidelines in the classroom, which we'll tap into in the next few slides. So when you were thinking about classroom management, you want to create guidelines, or I like to call them community guidelines. And so when you talk about them being community guidelines, folks are more interested in creating them, right? We don't want to call them rules per se because sometimes the word rule could throw your students off. So a guideline could be something that we create together with our students to ensure that they are following the rules or the guidelines that they themselves created for themselves to make sure that everyone is being respectful in the classroom. We want to also have a routine, a daily routine, which means, okay, every time the students enter the classroom, we do a warm up, whether it be a pledge or we stand and shake our hands to get our energy out. We want to be sure that there is some sort of routine so that every day doesn't seem like a random day. And also, you want to know your audience. And so, when you're working in inner cities, you have to understand that there are cultural and social issues that are going on. You want to holistically look at your students. And so before disciplining them or setting guidelines or making any sudden changes, you want to know who you're working with and how that may affect them. I love creating positive interactions with my students. And so what that could mean, right, is that every day I play a snaps game to get their attention. And so what that means is I take my finger and I snap it to a student to get their attention, and they snap to me or they send it to their peer. And that way we are collaboratively coming up with a way of language without yelling, without pointing fingers, and also it gets us comfortable with being in a space together. I may not be really good at eye contact, but I have to make eye contact with my peer in order to catch the snap, and then I have to make eye contact with another peer in order to throw the snap. And so we're building a language of trust and understanding in the classroom that way. You want to also create risk-free response opportunities. And so we don't want our students to feel like if they get the answer wrong, it's an embarrassing thing. We want to always create an environment that allows students to answer freely. Let's if even if the answer is wrong, them being comfortable enough to yell out the answer or take that risk um, would be great for me. And so sometimes I like to throw in questions that are really, really easy that anyone could get so that everyone gets comfortable and or excited to answer. And then you also want to find unique ways to address problem behavior students. We don't want to call out, we don't want to embarrass, we don't want to shine a light on someone who is maybe having a really bad behavior day. And so you want to figure out ways in which you could pull a student to the side and have a conversation, and just to see what's going on. I love restorative justice practices. So, to get further into it, you want to avoid mocking students as a way of discipline in the classroom. You never know where uh, their confidence lies. You never know what's going on at home. And so you could damage a student's ability to open up to you, to open up to anyone. We want to provide a space, a safe space that is constructive instead of damaging. You don't want to threaten a student. You never know how that will go. I believe that it takes us in circles. And so we want to avoid doing those. And everything should stay constructive. You don't want any non constructive criticism. You don't want any finger pointing. The purpose of having a classroom and teaching is so that students learn. And so we should keep it that way. We don't want to ask students to publicly explain misbehavior. So, like I said, you don't want to shine a light. You don't want to stop the entire classroom to yell at a student or ask a student why they aren't behaving. You don't want to argue with your students, and you don't want to force your students to behave. We set the guidelines for a reason. You set repercussions after that. And if they aren't following the guidelines, they already know the repercussions. And so you act on the repercussions, but you don't want to argue. You don't want to publicly put them on Front Street and explain their misbehavior. And you don't want to force anyone to do any actions that they don't want to do. So, when you are a good presenter and when you have great classroom management skills, your students are interactive. They are raising their hands, they're answering questions, they're asking questions. You have a classroom where guidelines are clear and no one has questions and everyone has an understanding, or the majority of the classroom has an understanding of what happens when we go against our classroom guidelines. And also, you want to hold yourself to those guidelines so that students are trusting you. Confusion is very low. For the most part, students are understanding and can teach their peers who seem confused. And then my favorite one is no wasted time. Everyone's respectful of time. We get through the lessons on time and we don't have to push any plans back. And then another favorite is when the feedback is constructive and productive. And so feedback is to how I could present better, how I should stop moving, how I should use less of how the presentation was great, but I would like to have more opportunities to answer questions or interact with the presenter. And so an effective teacher, the students are engaged in the assignment and the teacher is just supervising. So you're just there to provide guidance, but the students are doing the work themselves. And an ineffective teacher, the teacher is working while students are not engaged. And so it could be me presenting in front of a crowd and I'm continue to go, but I hear a bunch of conversations going on. That is ineffective. No one's learning and you really aren't teaching. Thank you so much for your time and stay tuned for the next presentation, which will be on problem solving and critical thinking. Have a great day.